What is up, guys? It has been a minute. I was in Uganda, Africa, and then I got a little bit sick on the way home, and so it has been a few weeks since you've seen me, but I am feeling better and I am really excited to share with you guys all that God did in Uganda 2025. So this trip was through my church, and we partner with Compassion International. And if you are not familiar with Compassion, they are working to alleviate poverty in Jesus' name. And that is their focus. And they do that through child sponsorships. And so we have the opportunity as a church. We have, I think, over 400 children are sponsored through our church. And that is a really big deal. These sponsorships help these kids that are living on the poverty line. These sponsorships, it's a monthly donation that goes and helps their school fees, their medical care, everything that they need to thrive in the place that they're at. It gives them access to their education, and it puts them in a community, a local church that teaches them about Jesus and loves them. Each kid is seen and known and loved to an extraordinary degree. This was a sponsor trip to go and meet our sponsor children, and I was so excited. I went on this trip 5 years ago. It was January 2020, and we used to do the trip every other year, and then obviously COVID happened and it delayed our ability to go back. And so this was the first time we got to go back since January 2020. Last time I was there, I got to meet two of our sponsor children, James and Katrina, that our youth and young adult programs sponsor collectively. And on that trip, I was the only representative from that age group going to visit these kids. And this trip was so special because there were multiple of us going to meet these kids. And so they got to see the magnitude of what it is to have an entire group sponsoring and praying and believing for them. I also got to meet my personal compassion child that I started sponsoring after the last trip. And so I have not gotten to meet her yet, and it was a delight to get to meet her. We flew Pittsburgh to JFK to Amsterdam, and then Amsterdam to Entebbe. So lots of flights, lots of layovers, all of the things. And when we finally landed in Uganda, it was late at night. And so we load up the bus with all of our suitcases. We get on the bus ourselves and drive to the hotel and basically go to sleep immediately because it was late. When we woke up the next morning, we were waking up to an African sunrise. We were waking up to a completely different culture. We got to do a lot of incredible things on this trip. We got to go and visit a survival center that our church had fundraised for. And a survival center with Compassion is a program that allows new moms to be able to get care and education as they are pregnant, as they're leading up to having their child, and then when they have their child up until the 1 year mark, which is statistically a very big milestone in the survival rates of children. And so they are ensuring that these moms are equipped and prepared, and they're ensuring that these children have the best chance of living a long, satisfying, beautiful life. Some of the things they do involve teaching the women, the moms, how to read and write. We talked to one woman that shared her testimony that she was able to read her Bible for the first time through these classes. They help them to gain entrepreneurial skills so they can have an income to support their family. They provide healthcare and medical checkups and take care of the children. They have a classroom filled with toys and educational tools for these young children to be able to grow and thrive. And then we traveled to a center right on the border of Kenya, and it is the second center that we as a church have sponsored. It was brand new 5 years ago when we visited for the first time, and so it was absolutely incredible to see what has changed in the community and the center since then. This community, this center, was established mainly because it is very common for children to be used as drug mules across the border into Kenya. And so this gave families a different option to get education for their children and to not have to sell them into this way of life just to provide for their family. So when we were there last time, there was a church building and there was an office building, and that was about it. There was some classrooms that were made of mud and grass that whenever it rained, they had to rebuild those classroom structures because they weren't permanent. And we pulled up this time, and there were a few of us that had been here 5 years ago on the last trip, and all of us were in tears pulling up to this center because it was night and day difference. They not only had the church building and the office building, they had built a bigger office building. They had built classrooms that were permanent and get to stay. They had an entire playground for these children, bright and colorful. They also had a well that we had helped fundraise as a church, and it was incredible to see that well. The closest well, you had to wait in line to get that water, and so it took time to just go and get access to any sort of water. And so to have one local that is solar powered and has basically unlimited water, as well as clean water, was game changing for this community. And not only did they pump that water into the center and the church for the children that are there, they have easy access to fresh water anytime that they want, but they also pumped it outside of the community and shared this water with the community around them, which provides water to the local hospital. And it's been used as an evangelism tool to bring the good news of Jesus to the people around them, because people have started coming to their church because they came for the fresh water and asked, why are you giving this to us? No strings attached. Like, why are you doing that? They took that as an opportunity to say, well, let me tell you about Jesus. Let me tell you about the living water that fills you up, that never runs dry, that makes you clean. And so that was really cool to get to see in that center. After we toured the center and got to meet some of the staff there that make what Compassion is doing possible, we got to meet our sponsor kids. I got to meet my girl, Patience, a beautiful 7-year-old girl. She has the biggest smile you have ever seen, and she wants to be a doctor someday. We had time one-on-one with our kids to get to know them, get to know their families and their dreams and what God is doing and moving in their lives. And then we got to come together as a group and play a bunch of group games, which was awesome to break down some of the barriers. You know, we had translators, but there is some language barrier, and it's a new experience for everyone involved. And so tensions can be a little bit high. And so I love that Compassion had us do a bunch of fun icebreaker games together. And it was just such a joy. We played hide and seek with the kids and they were ecstatic. My girl Patience was competitive, which heyo, I am too. And so we were the first ones there every time because she wanted to win. We played musical chairs and sang Sunday school songs, and it was just beautiful. A lot of the footage that I'm going to be using in this vlog was actually taken on my phone by Patience. So you get the Patience POV. She was just enamored with this idea of getting to capture a moment and then play it back later. And so I actually have some of the sweetest memories from this trip because she was taking them. So that's really special. And then the next day we had service with them, and there was worship and Bible reading and encouragement and just hearing what God has done in that center and in those kids. And so many of them got together and performed different dances and songs. It was powerful, to say the least. It was joyful and exuberant and amazing. It was really cool to see all of us getting to worship together next to our sponsor kids and with this church that is our family just halfway across the world. Another really cool thing we saw there was how these children are trained up in the Word of God, that they have a genuine passion for the Lord. And so it was the kids that were leading worship. It was the kids that were reading the Bible. It was the kids who were praying over the team and the generation around them. It was the kids that were leading in faith. Then we traveled to our second center. This is the center that we have been working with for about 15 years. And so we have a long history with them. We have seen God do miracles in their community. We have some close bonds with the people there. And so it was really special. We got to join them for Sunday morning church service. And it was, again, amazing to see what God has done in the last 5 years since we were last able to be there. The church building itself had dirt floors and had a minimal interior. There was a small stage and a couple of microphones for the preacher and the translator, but it was still getting launched and started. Well, we walked in and they have fully finished floors and walls and ceiling. They have lights and screens for lyrics. They have microphones and tech team and a worship team with in-ears and all of the things that are needed to just have an excellent standard of service to bring more people in. They're able to stream their services online to reach even more people. It was absolutely breathtaking to see what God has done in the last 5 years in their community, and to see the health of the community around them, how many jobs have been created in this community because of the work that Compassion has been doing through the local church. We got the opportunity to worship and to fellowship, and my soul was so encouraged by the ministry that they're doing there. It was just a powerful day. Some of our team got to share their hearts and their testimonies, and it was powerful. The congregation praying over our pastor and some of his needs and his family. It was just this beautiful unity in the Spirit of God. And then we got to see some of our sponsored children that are at that center and their family members. So we got to sit with them and ask them what we could be praying for their families as a whole, and just hear how they have been and what God has been doing in their lives and encouraging the kids in their studies. It was amazing. We then left the center to go have lunch with a lot of the church staff and volunteers. And so we said goodbye to the kids for a little bit, and we would see them again the next day, but we spent some intentional time with the church family, and it was a beautiful day outside. We shared a meal. We were sitting under the shade of banana trees and having the breeze go by, and we got to engage in some worship together. We were sharing just community and what God has been doing in our lives and ministries and their lives and ministries. We were laughing and sharing joy and sharing hardship and just being in community. And it felt like a family reunion, when it's like, okay, maybe I don't know everyone here personally, I don't know all of their names, but I know that there is something that makes us connected. It makes us deeper than just strangers. One of the amazing things that we got to experience while we were there was we got to learn about how Compassion is actually phasing itself out of that community. And that is a beautiful thing, because that means that the community has become so self-sustainable that they are the ones meeting the needs of the people around them, that they no longer need the support of Compassion in the same way that they did. It is a beautiful testament to what Compassion is doing, truly alleviating poverty in Jesus' name. And it's really cool, all of the kids that are in the program, until they graduate, they will continue to be sponsored. And so we get to continue to have those relationships with them all the way through their graduation. But it's really cool to know that this center, this community, this church is thriving and impacting their community in such a way that Compassion is able to release themselves from supporting them and move on to other places that they can then support. Even that region of Uganda has improved vastly, that they're not even looking at putting new centers in that region, because there have been so much growth and change and economic development in that area of Uganda. Then we got to our final day, and all of the kids came to the hotel that we were staying at that had a beautiful outside area. And so they came and joined us, and we just had a day to spend quality time with them. We shared meals together. We were outside. The weather was perfect, not too hot, but beautiful. It felt like a taste of heaven. We were playing soccer and jump rope and volleyball and dancing and talking and getting to know the people that pour into our kids, and it was just so special to get to have that day with them. I kept pausing throughout the day to just take it all in and remember, like, this is something I'm going to want to remember for the rest of my life, this peace and this joy. I got to spend some time with James and Katrina, and it was so cool to see how they've grown over the last 5 years. James is 12 now, and he is such a young man after God's own heart. He wants to be a bank manager someday, and he is working hard in his studies to be able to do that. He is compassionate and kind and caring for the people around him. He was so excited. One of the things that we were able to give him was his very own Bible, and he was just so excited to be able to receive that. And I know that that is an age where your faith really becomes your own, and so I was so excited that we were able to have that experience with him. And then with Katrina, it was so precious to get to spend some time with her. She has some medical difficulties, and so to get to just pour out some extra love and focus and attention on her and see the joy that comes out of her. She is such a joyful girl. We got to learn more about her needs and how we can help her and support her and pray for her. She was so funny too. Girl has a little bit of attitude. And she told us while we were going about this day, And she told us she does not like to sing. And then halfway through the day, girl is singing and dancing, and we're like, where did this come from? And she just gave us this little look like, what? And it was special to get to even play soccer with James and Katrina and know that they are at the same centers and that they are now family because of the connection that they have through compassion. And then came the hardest part, which is traveling home. We had so many amazing connections. All of the compassion staff that was with us. We had 3 compassion staff from USA, and we had 2 or more compassion staff from Uganda every day with us. And so they were the utmost of respectful, of helpful, of kind. They know every single need that these kids have, and they know how to meet them. We had people sponsor children on the trip the day before we would get to meet them, and they made it possible that we would get to meet those kids. They go above and beyond to see and love and lead and protect these children, and it was an honor to be a part of this trip with them. The way home was definitely not what I anticipated. I got pretty sick on the way home. My pastor actually, out of the kindness of his heart, got me and a couple of the other girls that weren't feeling too well to get home earlier than the rest of the crew, just so that we could recover at home and not be waiting in the airport for hours on end, which was immensely kind and above and beyond. It was also really cool because one of the conversations that we had throughout this trip was how we want to bring the heart of Uganda back to Pittsburgh. There are so many things about the Ugandan church that the American church is missing. And that to me was a display of the same extravagant love that the Ugandan church has. And to see that it is alive and active in my friends and family in the American church too was really, really cool. But one thing I'm grateful for with the extended time of recovery after the trip was I had a lot of time to sit with God, journal out what he did, thank him for what he did, and meditate on what I want to do with that coming back. And part of that is I feel like it is my responsibility to share with those who have not yet been able to go to Uganda or to see the impact of maybe a child sponsorship through Compassion or even through another organization. I just want to speak to what impact you are making. The American church as a whole is in the top 1% of wealth in the world. And that means the American church has a responsibility to share and steward what has been given to us. And so I wanted to bring back as many photos and videos and stories as possible to my friends and family in the American church, because what we do matters. And we can't afford to be passive. We can't afford to be selfish and to keep it all internal for ourselves. The American dollar goes a long way in Uganda and in other countries. And so when we are giving, we are actually making a way for things that would not be possible for these people on their own. And organizations like Compassion, what they do with that is they don't just give it and walk away, but what they do is they work with their beneficiaries and they teach them and they ask them and they work with them. What are your needs? What are your dreams? And how can we invest in those things? So a lot of what they do is helping these families get jobs, get education, have the ability to send their children to education, to get jobs, to break the cycle of poverty. But you have a part to play in that. If you are a Compassion sponsor already, I just want to encourage you. What you're doing makes such an impact. The ability for these kids to have healthcare and to have education and to have a place that tells them about Jesus is life-altering. We had one Compassion alumni tell us about his experience, and he said he had a sponsor who never wrote a letter a day in their sponsorship, but he saw other kids in the program get sponsored and then their sponsor had to cancel, and then they'd get another sponsor and their sponsor had to cancel, and he said, my sponsor was faithful. And even though I never got a letter from them, they showed their love to me through their support. And then he shared that he went on to a leadership experience that was also partnered with sponsorships, and he got a sponsor who wrote him regularly. And he said that she became like a spiritual mother to him. I had people ask me, well, if you're raising this money to go and visit Uganda, wouldn't it be better to send that money to them directly and have them do something with it? And I think there's a lot of merit to that question, but we have to understand that it is not relationships or financial help pitted against each other. But those things in unison, in the spirit, is what resources and revitalizes communities. For a child to have someone come and halfway across the world and say, I traveled all this way to see you because I love you, because I believe in you, because I care for you, that is not something that can be measured in financial means. And at the same time, we come back from these trips and I have a burden on my heart to give above and beyond what I already contribute monthly, because I've seen the impact that it has on these families. So if you already sponsor a child, my encouragement to you is to pray for your child. Write them letters, send them pictures, tell them you believe that they can get an education. Tell them that you believe that God has good plans for them. And then if you have it on your heart, there are opportunities through Compassion to give above and beyond. They have certain amounts that you can give per year to the center, to the individual child, and to the family. And when you give to the family, you are helping build the entire family, and it's a holistic approach to empowering this family out of poverty, and it can have some massive ramifications. And so if you have it on your heart to give in that way, it could be a big deal to your family, to their future. One of the women on our trip that has gone for years and years has regularly given family gifts each year, and she has seen this family have new jobs, new houses, new life given to them through the support that Compassion has given them. But it's not just that they've done everything for them, but that they have learned how to steward it themselves. And then if you don't already sponsor a child through Compassion International, I would ask you to pray about what God might be asking you to give. So if you have an interest in learning more about Compassion, sponsoring a child, or any of the work that they're doing, I'm gonna leave the links in the description below for you to check out. I have a feeling this might be my longest video because I just can't stop talking about the goodness of God and what He is doing in Uganda through the work of Compassion.